What's up, everybody? THiNK International coming to you with a Skype interview. We have with us today Jud Wilhite. He's pastor of the 9th largest church in the nation. He's authored several books. He's co-founder of People of the Second Chance, and just an all-around amazing guy. How you doing, Jud?
Hey, doing great. Awesome to be with you. Thanks, man.
Yeah, you bet. So now, your church was just called by Outreach Magazine the 9th largest numerically in the nation right now, and you're in Vegas. Pretty crazy. And last year you grew by 1,500 people. I mean, what are you attributing this growth to?
Well, one thing in our benefit right now, it's both a blessing and a challenge, is just the economy. Vegas is leading the nation as far as the worst economy in America, and I think I recently read the 4th worst in the world coming out of the recession as far as impact. So when your unemployment is at a published level of about 14.9%, latest numbers, so it's probably 20 to 25% in that realm, partial or complete unemployed. When you've got that much kind of despair and hopelessness going on, you've got a ripe environment.
Yeah, I bet, huh? Are people in your church, are their spirits up? Are they kind of, more a little bit looking toward the future now, being a part of a congregation?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's happening. I do think that shift is happening. I still think your personal economy, it definitely affects where you're at. So if you're unemployed, that's one perspective. If you're not, that's another. So it's all in there. But it's a very kind of ripe time right now in Las Vegas where people are turning to God. They're looking for hope. They're reaching out for the healing Jesus offers.
Right. You guys have 5 sites, including your internet campus, right?
Correct.
So when exactly did you guys do multi-site?
We started, I'm going to say, 5 years ago. Right at about 5 years ago, we launched our first campus in the Las Vegas Valley, and then we've launched a couple more physical locations. We did a merge with a Baptist church that kind of gave up and surrendered their building.
Wow.
And wanted to reach people for Christ, but weren't really able to do it in their current facility, so that was really meaningful and has been really cool to see. And we've also got 2 campuses we recently launched inside of 2 different prisons, which is sort of a different concept of actually taking a church campus by video with a volunteer and pastoral team inside a prison.
Wow. Who came up with that idea? What inspired that?
Well, we've got a guy was in our church community on our staff named Jake Bodine who had a real vision to go behind bars into prisons, and Jake launched a ministry we call God Behind Bars. Wow. And it's doing awesome stuff. So we're currently in the women's penitentiary in Las Vegas, and we're in a jail in Oklahoma. And we're about to launch in the men's penitentiary in Las Vegas. So.
That's awesome. Have you seen, this is just kind of a side note question, but have you seen anybody come from the women's penitentiary once they've gotten out into your actual church? Have you heard of stories like that?
Yes. Yeah, we just did a whole video story of a lady named Jana that had tried to kill herself 3 different times, and the last time she tried to kill herself, the officer basically arrested her and said, "Look, I'm booking you because you're not going to die on my watch." Well, she ended up in this women's prison, and in the prison, somebody invited her to Central, and she started coming. And it's such a powerful story just to see how God reached out into her life. And one of the things she said that really moved me is she said, "So many times I felt invisible, and what having a church in the prison showed me is that I wasn't invisible to God or to these people." So she's part of our church community. I saw her this last weekend.
No way. Man, that's phenomenal. I've never actually heard of people, I know prison outreach and stuff, but I've never actually heard of a church making it like a campus.
Well, you have to go in with small groups first, and that was our approach, particularly around recovery issues, because the prison is very open to help when it comes to recovery issues. Most people go back into prison due to some kind of addiction, or it's in their life. I think it's over 70% that go back. It's right in the middle of it. Wow. So that's how we get our foot in the door. And then it's relationships. Once you build these small group communities around recovery groups, once they came to trust us, they allowed us to launch a church campus. So, it's an amazing thing. There was a handful of ladies that were part of the church community in the first prison we launched in, women's prison. And now half of those women attend church every weekend, which is the most they'll allow us to set up chairs, because they don't want more than half the prison in one space.
Wow. Man. Now, innovation-wise, that's unreal. Also, too, the story of another church kind of giving up their building and whatnot. We're starting to hear more and more about that in general. We're seeing that. How was that whole transition? Was that pretty smooth, or?
It was really smooth. I think if you're gonna do a transition like that, there's a few things that play into it, and one is you just need to be completely honest and forthright. I mean, I can remember a congregational meeting with this church when they're considering merging with us, and I was just very clear and direct that this was a disillusion. You guys were dissolving as a church.
Wow.
We're not like partnering up. You're, as far as it's not going to be 50-50 and
right.
You're coming under our leadership, our board, our direction. The only way we do this is you guys dissolve, all your assets go to our church, and we become, one body, one congregation. So I had a few people walk out and slam the door.
Wow.
Which is inevitable in those scenarios. But a ton of those people, there's only about 50 of them left when we started. Now that campus is absolutely, I think it averages almost 600 people, and it's all they can hold. It's a little bitty building,
Wow.
So the same volunteers that, had the idea originally are still serving there. They're part of it. And I talked to one of the ladies recently who's got to be, in her late 60s, and she just said, everything you said you would do, you did.
Wow.
Everything. And to me, that's the biggest key. Like, just if you're going to do it, go in with a clear plan and clear communication. And then, boy, you better say what you're going to do,
Yeah, exactly.
Do what you're going to say.
Yeah.
It's been a drill. Working on me a little bit this morning.
That's all right. That's all right. Any suggestions for pastors that are maybe part of that church that is dissolving or just can't seem to get moving and are really looking toward, joining up with another church in the area that is moving forward, that is doing something?
Well, I think there's... I would say, obviously, there are doctrinal issues you got to be aware of and theological issues, but also the heart is really key when you're looking for a church to partner with. We partnered with this one church because several years ago, this particular church had reached out to some members of their own denomination, and they wouldn't really take their calls. And they called us, and, we sat down and met with them, and they're just this little church of 50 people.
Wow.
And we tried to help them however we could. So 2 years later, when they realized, we just need to partner with our facility with somebody who can really get it done, they did not turn to their own denomination. They turned to those who helped them when they needed help.
Wow. Now, with multi-campus being such a big thing now, I think it's most of the largest churches in the nation right now are multi-campus. How do you keep the not home base, the ones at our campuses, how do you keep them from being like second-class citizens, Yeah.
Well, you have to be very intentional because the natural gravitational pull goes, like at the original campus, the natural gravitational pull will be to see your other campuses, your regional or multi-site campuses, as kind of in the way. Like you've got so much to do, and my gosh, these guys, they need all these things. And then the tendency of the multi-site campuses, the natural tendency will be to drift toward, they don't love us, they don't care about us, they just threw us out here, we don't really matter, and you can get bitter and frustrated. And so if you don't do anything specific, that's exactly what will happen every single time.
Wow.
So you have to look at it and acknowledge that and say, this is the natural drift. Just like, most people don't drift towards spiritual maturity, just naturally, right? I think in the multi-site movement, most campuses and larger churches, especially historic churches that launch them, don't drift toward harmony and unity between those campuses. So you have to be very specific about it. So it's got to be addressed at a staff level. You got to teach about it. You got to talk to your campus pastors about those kinds of issues and hear from them. One of the most important things that I do is I meet with our campus pastors along with our leadership team on a monthly basis just to hear from all of them collectively. How are we doing? How's the original campus doing? Give them a real opportunity for 360-degree feedback as to mistakes that we're making, things that we do that cause them to feel devalued, things nobody intends it. Like we did a Christmas mailer, and we didn't financially want to put the resources behind all these individual mailers. But what that ultimately meant when it landed on the desk in like our regional campus offices is we just had the directions and, the information to our original campus on mailers that went all over the city. Well, if you're a campus pastor at a regional campus and you're not on the mailer, that hurts for good reason, right? Like we fumbled. But without that kind of environment and that kind of trust and communication, I don't think we would have ever really had that feedback coming back in so that we could deal with it.
Wow. Pastoring in Vegas, I know it gets kind of a bad rap. It's heard, like it is Sin City, but a lot of people fly in there to sin and then fly out, really. So it's not necessarily that the people are all just nasty and corrupt and whatnot. But obviously it is a different culture. Desensitized, I'd say. You can drive down the street and see billboards of butts everywhere.
Yeah.
There's really not much, I don't think, of a shock factor with the people there. I could be wrong, but how do you kind of stay innovative? And I know that your church kind of does have that cool shock factor. How do you guys keep that? What do you do?
Well, first I would say that, Vegas's reputation is really people from your town and other towns that get on planes and fly out here, and they're the ones that party all night and act crazy. Us locals, that's not really our vibe anymore, right? I only go to the Strip when my friends are in town, or people go there if they have to work there. And then as soon as they're done with work, they want to get away, So, but honestly, we faced that. I think we faced a crossroads a few years ago. We've got a great arts team. We've got a super creative ministry and just the ability to pretty much do anything. I mean, I remember one of the Blue Man Group guys was like, you guys are known as the best free show in Vegas.
Wow.
So we could do all that. We could compete at the highest level with people flying from the ceiling and, crazy stuff. And we were going down that road a little bit. About 5 years ago, I think we all just had a moment, I certainly did, where I realized if people aren't walking out of here talking about Jesus, then we failed. If they're walking out talking about how cool that was, then that's failure. And once we define failure and success in those terms, that we want people walking out, and success is acknowledging that God is glorious and good. That's success.
Yeah.
So if that's success, it defines how you approach it. So we pulled our creative programming back quite a bit. We're pretty meat and potatoes. I mean, we do creative stuff. Right. And for most churches, you would look at what we do and think, that's pretty out of the box. But for us, it's actually us pulling back a little bit, from other things we used to do, and just trying to keep it about straightforward Bible teaching, keep it about Jesus, keep it real, have authentic worship. And we'll do a creative element. We'll do, we'll cover songs or whatever just to stay in people's worlds that they're kind of in, that they come in living in.
Right.
But, so we made a kind of a direction just to try to tell people the truth about God and the gospel. And honestly, we've seen much faster, more impacting growth when we made that shift.
Wow.
And among unchurched people. I'm not talking about a bunch of church people started coming.
Wow. Now, you have a lot of high-profile guest speakers. You guys have had, just recently, last October, Brian Head Welch from Korn. I see on your website that you guys are about to have Michael, I don't know how to say his last name, Franzese, an old mob boss guy. In the church, a lot of people say when high-profile people get saved, people have them speak, but they shouldn't necessarily have a platform yet because they're not established. What are your thoughts on that? Because obviously you have them speak. I know thousands of people came to Christ when Brian spoke at your church. What's your thought and philosophy on that?
Well, there's a debate in the church about evangelism, and what's the best approach to personal evangelism, right? Is it relational versus attractional? Meaning, is it all about the one-on-one relationship? Should it all be about that, as opposed to trying to bring somebody to church and have an attractional event and all that? And I just feel like those are debates that are often done by people who actually aren't doing personal evangelism. If I can just be frank with you, because as I like pray for my friends and neighbors, and am trying to reach people that work the tables in the casinos, and that work beside the pools, delivering beverages to people. I mean, these are the people that I'm called to, and as I pray for them and have conversations with them, I need opportunities to share personally my faith, and I desperately need things to bring them to that are out of the norm. I need a way to go, hey, let's check this out together. And they may not, but it's different than just come to church with me, So that's why we do them, first of all, because I think people that are really, truly trying to reach people for Christ need avenues to invite and bring friends along to start conversations, to keep things rolling. So my whole opinion on the attractional versus relational approaches to evangelism is yes to all of it. Like whatever's going to work. Yes. Why does it have to be either or? So for us, we've found great success with that, and I find it personally as I'm sharing my faith that if I have an event to invite somebody to, it really kind of changes the tone of the conversation, and it helps them take a step. Anytime you do it, you take a risk on the person and who they are. For instance, we had Dog the Bounty Hunter. We were the first church dog the Bounty Hunter spoke in, not the first religious event, but like the first congregational kind of environment, at least according to him. That's what he told me. And, after that, he had, all of the stuff that exploded with some racial comments and all of that. And so that's always out there, but I would do the same thing again. I don't have any hesitation about doing it. And I feel like people can differentiate.
Sure.
For instance, Michael Irvin, all over ESPN, football analyst, after Irvin's crack ordeal several years ago, I'm going to say in 05 or 06, whenever it was, maybe it was a little earlier than that, but we had him in. And it was awesome because we had him in not as the example. We had him in as, all right, so you got busted with crack in your car, and you say you're a follower of Jesus. Help us with that. Not defend it, but like talk about the struggle with addiction and talk about where you're at. And I just found in Vegas, our people would much rather hear a real dude talk about real struggles and be straight up honest than they would hear a guy get up and say, praise the Lord every other word and try to make it all spiritual.
Yeah. Wow. And that, it sounds, your heart is, you're such a huge champion of people. It sounds like you want, great things for just everybody you come into contact with. And again, second chances and whatnot. Now you started People of the Second Chance, a nonprofit organization with Mike Foster. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. People of the Second Chance is awesome. I'm so excited about what People of the Second Chance is doing, and just about the privilege of being able to work with Mike. But we're both grace people. We both have such a heart for people who are hurting. And so People of the Second Chance is just about continuing that conversation on the movement of grace and extending grace in our lives. As much as we talk about grace in the church, it's pretty domesticated. It's kind of grace on our terms. And it's not so much, when you look at Jesus, he tended to have grace for people on, that was untamed, if you will. It was radical, and we tend to domesticate it. So there's a leadership component to People of the Second Chance that's championing grace from a church standpoint. There's a corporate component that's championing grace outside of just the Christian sphere, because I think grace is a human value as well. It's anchored in spiritual values, but it's also just a human value. And every time a leader falls, every time a celebrity blows it, every time somebody has an affair or goes through a divorce, we just sling mud, especially if they're outside of the church. And then we just, well, that's typical, this, that. And what would happen if we as a church were always the first people there helping people up?
Wow. Wow. Hey, do you guys go out and speak in churches for this, People of Second Chance? And
Yeah, absolutely. There's a website, POTSC, stands for People of the Second Chance.com, POTSC.com. I just encourage people to go there, and we do speak. Mike especially goes out and speaks a lot on the message of People of the Second Chance, and so I know he'd love to talk to some folks who may be interested in having him out to speak.
For sure. And he wrote a book, Graceonomics, great book, kind of along this lines. And you just released a book, Throw It Down. It's called Throw It Down. And
yes.
That seems, can you tell us about it? Because it's kind of a champion of people type book as well, right?
Yeah. Well, Throw It Down is really, the subtitle is Leaving Behind Behaviors and Dependencies That Hold Us Back. And that's a mouthful, but the big idea is, helping people move forward in life and get healthy and deal with issues, whether it's anger issues or addiction issues, whether it's money-related kind of compulsory issues. It's just facing some of those destructive habits and throwing them down, basically. Whatever is tempting us or separating us from really the life God is calling us to, whatever sin is going on in our life. This is really a champion to deal with that, this book.
Now you've written a bunch of books, Eyes Wide Open, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and what inspired you to just really go after Throw It Down? I mean, you pretty much released a book every year, it seems like, for the past few years.
Yeah. Well, Throw It Down was really personal to me. I was a drug addict for 4 years in my life. I was an addict before I came to faith, and when I did come to faith, it was really life transforming, but it was also such a struggle to find recovery and healing and acceptance. So one of the things we've seen in Vegas with the economy and everything else is people turning to some really destructive behaviors, and we see that all over the place. I think in our nation, addiction is huge everywhere. Whether people address it or talk about it or whatever. And so I wanted to capture some raw stories from Las Vegas of the way people have found healing and hope through the grace of God. I wanted to capture some principles for recovery. And one day I was reading through the book of Exodus, and it dawned on me, Exodus in the Old Testament is all about the road out. And it's really this picture of how God took people who were in slavery and led them to freedom. And it's kind of all these twists and turns you don't expect. I started wondering if there were some sort of metaphorical analogies or things that can be drawn out of Exodus that apply to our own personal journey from slavery to addiction or anger or whatever to finding freedom. And I just found all these principles that I think really apply in life that were true then about their journey to freedom that could be true about our own sort of personal journeys to freedom as well. So,
wow. Where do you find time to write? Being a pastor of a big church with multi campuses, and you're speaking everywhere, and
you just have to make it. You have to make time. And so I heard years ago Chuck Swindoll say an hour a day every day.
Wow.
An hour a day every day. And I don't do that anymore every day. I did for years. In fact, I only write when I really feel passionate and compelled to write about something. And if I do, then I'll go into a season where I'll just try to do a little bit every day. And it's amazing. If you're faithful to that for a period of time, and, I've written enough books to have kind of a framework on what I need before I start writing and kind of all of that, you can get a lot done in an hour a day.
Wow. Yeah. If it's all flowing just in there, huh?
Yeah. And for me, the way I'm wired, it rarely flows in such a way that I have constant inspiration, so for me, like I may have a spurt of inspiration. It may last 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but it honestly rarely goes more than an hour. So I'm not losing anything when I stop, really.
Yeah.
And if it's not there, I can just walk away and come back tomorrow. I'm going to come back anyway.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right. Now, where do you get, speaking of inspiration, where do you get inspiration for, sermons? I mean, how do you take it from that idea to you're up there on stage, speaking?
Well, that's the hardest thing I do every week. And I feel like week in and week out, it's such a challenge. There's the spiritual dimension of speaking God's word to people, and that responsibility is huge. And then there's just the creative dimension of doing it, 40 plus weekends a year.
Yeah.
And, year after year and trying to talk on similar topics that need to be talked about in a fresh way. Yeah. All of that, is legit. So for me, my process is I try to start with a scriptural passage. I'm kind of a Bible guy in my teaching style.
Yeah.
So I really, I don't bounce around. Sometimes I do. Like I'm in a series right now where I'm bouncing all over the place. But I usually don't bounce around to a lot of passages. I try to go to one place in the Bible. And I do that because our people don't know the Bible well enough. And I've watched their faces. Like when I ask them to turn over here and then turn over there and then turn over here, most of them just close their Bibles up if they brought it, because they're like, whatever, man. I found Matthew, and that took 5 minutes, and I got to chapter 5, and now you want me to turn over here? Like, what are you smoking? Man, I don't know. I don't understand this, And so they just sort of close the Bible up, sit back, and so I try to go to one place, and I try to teach that passage. And so what I'll do, the big picture is I'll look out over a 12-month season. I'll have kind of big ideas of topics that need to be addressed seasonally. In the fall, you want to do things that are, it's kind of back to church time, so you have a great opportunity to talk to sort of the larger community, a lot of people in church for the first time, those kind of environments. Right. As I move through the fall into October, November, it's getting more discipleship oriented. I'm trying to take people on a journey. That goes right up to Christmas. Again, for me, in January. Usually January I talk finances, money, and then February to May is the same kind of funnel approach where I start broad. This year we're going to do a recovery series coming up in February, and then we'll sort of bring that in. I'm going to do a series on fear, and then we'll touch on the family. But as we get closer to summer, I usually do maybe a book study or some deeper theological studies as we head into summer, and August is usually like a church series. What does it mean to be the church? How are we the church? Kind of firing up. So I have sort of a specific year plan, and then within that, I'm trying to find either sections of the Bible, books of the Bible, or texts that will guide me and direct me. So that's a long answer, but I start with the text. After the text, I outline the text. Then I have a creative meeting with some of our team, and we actually brainstorm that. And I have a very specific way of going about a message, which is, I got this part from Andy Stanley, who I just love as a leader and as a person. And, when he talks about his teaching style, he says you always start with me, and then you go to we, and then you go to God, something like that. At least I took his early part. He goes on, but he's the master, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I got a lot out of this idea that I start with myself, and I always try to lay it over my life, and I always try to set up the problem in the introduction, real basic. And then in the message, I just try to address that problem. The text addresses the problem, Right. So usually when I'm reading a text and I'm thinking about teaching it, I'm thinking, what problem is this text addressing? Is there a way that has application to contemporary life? So I think it's really important, at least for me and my style, to start in people's world, to start in their life with stuff that we all wrestle with. And I found as a communicator, if I wrestle with something as a person, it's likely, and I don't mean this arrogantly, but it's just likely that other people do as well. Wow. And as you sit around a creative meeting and talk to other people, and you find out, what they wrestle with, human experience is varied, but it's also very shared. And I think, as you sort of talk out of that, people find their connection points with that. So we'll come up with creative ideas, illustrative approaches, those kinds of things. I'll do a lot of the textual research on my side of it and bring that. And that creative team really helps me with application too. Like what really works, because sometimes I just need to hear what works for other people spiritually, and there's sometimes really great application there. So then I manuscript. I write it all out. So I work on my message outline on Monday. Wow. On Tuesday, I have a meeting for an hour and a half where we talk about weekend services and we hone in on the creative elements to the message. On Wednesday and Thursday morning, I manuscript it out.
Wow. Man.
So I have it done in the bag by Thursday afternoon. And then our first services are on Saturday. So I spend a couple hours with it Saturday afternoon and get ready, to deliver it.
It sounds like you're very open to ideas and whatnot from your creative team, that you're not someone who just goes in knowing exactly that you're right and this is what you want.
Yeah, no, I always want. What I want is the best possible message that can be delivered that weekend. And I've learned that I'm not the person alone who can get the best message. And if I bring other voices in, it gets better. It gets more profound. It gets deeper, or it gets simpler, and that's better for people. And so what defines the best message? My best message is never defined by whether other, and again, this is to the church. I know I'm talking to church leaders, but I don't speak to church leaders. You know, there's some guys when they get a platform, they start doing messages for church leaders, and their churches. I speak to the church. That's who I'm called to on the weekend.
Yeah.
So my definition of success isn't that it's new or profound. It's actually that it's the old story. It's old. It's the gospel. It's been around thousands of years.
Right,
it doesn't change. That it's contextual where people can understand it. And then they walk out with 2 layers of application. I got this from a mentor years ago. 2 layers of application. One is a personal layer of application for their life from the text. And then the other is, especially if you're a senior pastor, a pastoral application for the church. You know, sometimes we need to take a text and not only apply it to individuals, but we need to talk as a body. How does this apply to us as a church body? And I think that's really a helpful way of looking at it.
Wow. You're a genius, Jud. You're absolutely
yeah, right. Yes, yeah. All this I got from someone else somewhere along the way.
I think that's part of genius, is stealing everybody else's stuff and doing it yourself. Online, they can find your church. Is it centralchristian.com or
centralchristian.com? Yep.
Cool. And then, do you have a personal blog?
I'll blog periodically over at People of the Second Chance.
Okay.
My main avenue is Twitter.
Twitter. What's your Twitter?
It's just Jud Wilhite. It's just my name.
Okay, Jud Wilhite.
At Jud Wilhite. JudWilhite.
Perfect.
But I like Twitter. It's a little less demanding than the blog world, you know.
Yeah, you can get a thought out
Mike's
like
always
that.
telling me, dude, you got to blog more at People of the Second Chance. I'm like, I know, but then you got to sit down and think about it, and then you got to write something decent. And with Twitter, I can go, hey man, I just ate at Wendy's. So I like Twitter. Twitter is much easier.
Right, perfect. Hey, thanks so much, Jud. We appreciate it. Our audience appreciates it. Jud Wilhite. THiNK Internationa.